Okay, here we are with part two, just finishing up our little tour of the do-it-yourself Z-wave irrigation control system here. What we've got here are these outdoor Z-wave modules. Each of these I've labeled just to help keep me straight in terms of what was there. As I talked about, the slick thing I found out is that these will run with 24 volts rather than the standard house voltage. So I'm simply using one 24 volt transformer. It's hiding back there in the spaghetti. Leads going to that, to the bus bar. So one transformer is powering all of these units. And the only problem I could see, and you'd have to keep this in mind, and I will with the programming, is you might not want a bunch of the valves simultaneously going off, especially with as long of the runs as I have. So when you're setting up your timing, you know, just make sure that maybe one zone isn't going exactly off at the same time another one's coming on. You know, give yourself a minute in between. So I don't know. I don't have the energy now to go and check and see how many of these you can open simultaneously. I knew it wasn't going to be a hassle for me to stagger the opening and closing times of the valve. So, but that's kind of slick. You're only having to buy one transformer, set you back maybe 15 bucks there, and you'd have to buy that with either of the other controllers. They don't come with their own transformers. Those other two are really meant to just be interchanged with an existing sprinkler system you've got, you know, put on the wall in your garage. And as I said in the other segment, for lawn irrigation, probably makes the most sense to just go with one of those standalone units. Obviously, you don't have that big pile of junky wire anywhere in your house. It's a lot cleaner with that other approach. You can go with as many zones as you want with those other systems, as I understand it. The only limitation is you're going to have to look at them as different devices. In other words, if you had 30 zones, the IrrigationCaddy, if you don't use the one master valve, I think it's 10 zones you can run with each of those units. We could buy 3 of the units, but you can't see and control all 30 of those zones with the same interface. Each of those controllers has a separate IP address, and you'd have to be dealing with them individually. As long as you could keep them straight, you could do that. Same deal essentially with the EtherRain, but it only controls 8 zones, so you're more limited still with that. You can have multiple units, but unless you're, I don't know, a software designer that found some other solution that I wasn't able to come up with, you'd have to look and treat those as individual units. With this system, you could have really as many zones as you wanted to. I probably will add a couple more on down the line, but probably no more than 15. But all you do, if you wanted to add a zone, would just be to add another one of these Z-wave controllers. I don't know if this system would work with other types of Z-wave modules. These are GE, I think, these outdoor Z-wave modules. Maybe others work. I haven't tried any. I'm kind of at the early point of my Z-wave experimenting. They may or may not work, but I can tell you that these do. And you know, I monitored them up front, made sure nothing's getting warm, everything seems kosher here. So this seems like a really good, if not kind of, you know, hillbilly do-it-yourself messy setup. But in terms of the results, I really like it. So let's go on over to the interface. Bring up, don't know how well we can see this here. This is the website that you deal with, well, if you're using the Vera 2, or should I say the Vera Lite controller, this Mikasa Verde. And each of those controllers you were looking at is obviously included as a device under the device tab. So if you scroll down here, I've got a separate room. That's how you organize it for irrigation, and I've got all 9 of them here. So turning a valve off and on is as simple as, well, I've got this one going right now. You just click off. It says transmit was okay. Back on if I want it on. No lag period. You can use Vera's phone app that's free. I walked out in my zones there and clicked them off and on, and there was maybe a 4 or 5 second lag period there. So really nice, no lag period like the Quicksmart system there. And if you had 30 of these, you'd have 30 devices here. So instant on and off couldn't be easier. And when you want to automate, you automate them like every other Z-wave device. I'm not going to go into the details here, I'm just kind of learning it myself, but basically you set up schedules for each of these. I've set up an on and off for each of the devices, so there's 18 of these, and then you associate those with a schedule, and the schedule can be whatever you want. So I've monitored it a couple days, and it seems to work really, really well. One thing that none of the systems seem to do a great job of is in terms of logging. In other words, you want to make sure that it did what you want it to do. And after digging around a little bit, I found a relatively decent way to do that with the Z-wave system here. Each Z-wave device, if you go into the settings, there's a tab for notifications, and you can set up notifications. I've set up one for when that controller is on and when it's off. In other words, anytime I manually trigger it on or off, I get a notification. I've set that up for all of them, and I've had it sent to my email. And I really don't want to get a bunch of bothersome emails with each of those. But what I've set up in Gmail here, and of course you can't see this, but you can figure it out for yourself if you know how to do it. You can set up an email filter in Gmail so it bypasses the inbox and goes right into a special folder I've labeled Z-wave notifications or Vera notifications. You probably can't see that real well. You've got notifications, and if you click on that, it says your trigger 1.5 east triangle occurred. So basically that to me is east triangle. That's one of the zones I have, and it basically told me that that was going on. And so by quickly looking at that folder, I can scroll through and confirm that at least those devices fired. There's no way to know whether the valve's actually working, and that's true of all the systems. You'd have to have some sort of actual interface with the valve, but this does tell me if the controllers work. And so that ended up amounting to a fairly handy log. And you can also do it the other way. You can go into any of these devices and hit the Logs tab, and it will give you a little set of records here. You can set it up so that any of the devices, if there are records for any of them, and the types of notifications, I'm just going to put trigger in here. I don't need all the other garbage. And this basically is a whole list of when these different Z-wave modules went off and on. So if I want to confirm that the schedule that I put in indeed went off and on or occurred as I wanted it to, I can confirm that this way. So none of these systems have what I would consider a super easy user-friendly log where you can just sort of see that your irrigating schedule happened when you wanted it to, but this workaround seems to be working well for me. So for me and my tree irrigating, because of my needs, either of more programs, programming abilities, or not wanting that lag time, the Z-wave system has turned out to be, at least for a week or so, to be a good solution. It appears to be really reliable, and like I said, no real complaints there. So for someone wanting to automate some irrigating, and you've got needs similar to mine, where you might need some more programs or you don't want to let that lag time, you might consider something like this. I think the Z-wave and the controllers ends up making a pretty decent irrigation system. Obviously, this isn't a irrigation-specific interface, which may or may not be an advantage for you. On the one level, for me, I've already got this, so it's kind of a one-stop shop that's already there. It's not a separate interface or component to have problems with or be responsible for. But on the other hand, it's not quite as specific. The IrrigationCaddy and the Lawn Check have some other nice features that you might really like, including a more graphical interface for scheduling, weekly calendars, things like that. So they're definitely worth checking out. They're all three seem to be pretty good products, but for me, this solution seems to work the best. So good luck in your irrigating. With our hot, dry weather this season, definitely need it. So signing off.